Stimulus by E.S. Wynn. It was noon when the trans-Uranian freighter Rust collided with the Jovian derelict. It had been unavoidable. When the Rust's thrusters had begun firing in time to burst, adjusting the bulk of the ship for a steady slingshot around Jupiter, her autopilot hadn't picked up the derelict hulk floating lazily in orbit, hadn't seen the mottled and broken hull hidden in the technicolor haze of deadly radiation that saturated space for miles beyond the atmosphere of the gas giant. Alarm bells flared too late. Engines came to fiery life too slowly. The collision was almost instantaneous. In the time it took for the captain's arms to tense, his pupils to dilate in the barest reaction of recognition and fear, the jagged leading edge of the hulk's dorsal stabilizer had sheared through the freighter and carved out enough steel to depressurize 2 decks, sending the Rust catapulting away into cold, starry darkness. "Again," a pair of lips demanded, creasing in the barest leering smile. Jupiter. 6 hours to the belt in the Ceres corridor, 4 if they could swing hard around the giant and use the force of its gravity to fling the ship out, catching the interstellar equivalent of a tailwind. It was routine procedure for small freighters, the kind of easy maneuver string performed along exacting mathematical parameters that was perfect for autopilot computers. Nothing complex, nothing to worry about, nothing like plotting courses through the busier shipping lanes closer to Earth where there were other ships to dodge. Each of the 7 long haulers in the Rust crew had been through the same procedure 1,000 times before. To them, the process was as normal as leaving automated dock loaders to their work and going for a drink at a local bar. This was the last leg of the journey. The sounds of dinner and excited chatter about home rang through the midship deck. High above, pacing the plating and glancing at the consoles, absently waiting as the computer flew his ship, the merchant captain stifled a yawn. And then the razor-like stabilizer fin rose out of the planet's radioactive curtain. The autopilot went into a frenzy. In a fraction of an instant, the control board was lit up with brilliant neon, the panicked intercom bleeding collision warnings. Engines flared, flexed in an automated attempt to compensate, vectored thrust violently, and spun the Rust away from Jupiter. But the reaction was too slow, generated too little force. This far into the swing, they were still trapped hard against the midsection of the planet, still fighting gravity. And as the stabilizer rose up steadily out of the haze to meet them like the grim and swinging blade of a massive scythe, the merchant captain's knuckles went white against the edge of a panicking console. "Again," the lips repeated. The collision was unavoidable. The leading edge of the hulk's dorsal fin buried itself into the Rust's hull with violent tenacity, slashed a wicked line in steel as it peeled away sealed layers and exposed the soft atmosphere within. In another fraction of a second, it was over. The Rust left spinning off, one sputtering engine severed and silently trailing after the hulk as it slipped back toward Jupiter, swallowed again by the planet's radioactive haze. "Again," the lips moaned. Rough and gleaming steel hung there in the violent orange half-light of Jupiter like the blade of a waiting knife, the leading edge of a derelict's dorsal stabilizer rising out of the planet's own vibrant cloud of radiation, a grimly painted omen of death and dismemberment. Space seemed to part around it as it rose to meet the Rust, forced its way into hull plating like the biting blade of some interstellar can opener. It took only an instant for the stabilizer to carve its way through steel and air alike, ripping through carpeting and cabling, separating furniture and passing inches from the captain's faithful terrier the instant before the decompression trailing in its wake sucked the little dog into merciless abyss among a swarm of crated cargo and broken dishes. "Change program," the pair of lips finally ordered, parting on bated breath. Shards of interstellar china and the tiny red wad of meat and frozen fur that had once been the little dog hesitated against the backdrop of an enigmatic gas giant, waiting, expectant. The lips parted again, quirked a little at the side. "Situation 12. Cobblestones. A narrow, meandering alleyway. A body spread across a streak of blood that ran like a thin river from the mutilated ruins of a man's face, the sounds of mourning New Orleans ringing and clattering through the air. 3 paces beyond the corpse, a man leered, squatted, adjusted the lens of his camera, snapped a picture. "Time index 1, the lips twitched, seemed almost disinterested for a moment. "Cobblestones, a narrow, meandering alleyway. No body, no streak of blood or mutilated face, no cameras, no flashes. Only the bustle, the hum and rattle of the French district remained, its sounds diminished, but still recognizable. Chefs that had been clattering through breakfast were now clattering quietly toward closing, passing bottles as freely as idle, tired conversation. Sounds and smells escaped through greasy screen doors that opened into gutter and cobblestone, a thick and Cajun haze on the night. Laughter in a doorway. A man with a bottle hidden within a paper bag stumbled out into the narrow alleyway, his mouth bent into a grinning rictus. His face was happy, yet oddly ashen, green-lit and haunted. Laughter rang louder, became desperate and hysterical. Somewhere, someone shouted, and then came the blood. Within seconds it was everywhere, rivers, lines, cascades of boiling crimson. And that laugh, half scream and half delight, skin peeled back, flayed against muscle, eyes caught fire, sizzled, popped. "Situation 37, the lips blurted, panting. A bed, sheets knotted and rumpled, the tang of desperation and sex in the air. Tied together by bonds of ripped fabric and butchered clothing, two bodies gyrated, ground violently against each other in the throes of some desperate act that looked more like the grappling of murderers than love. In the humid, flying heat, someone screamed, voice mingling with another moaning howl, mixing in the torrid night like the voices of banshees, wolves. "Situation 29, the lips breathed. "Todd, please," a woman screeched, eyes frightened, red and wide with tears of loss and terror. "Please, please!" The fist rose, tightened, white around the knuckles. A scream, a shout, the fury of raw anger, brutality. "Situation 81, the lips shouted, heat, screaming, the contorted face of a woman framed in eager flame, skin scorching, curling, the macabre sound of sizzling, dripping, the roar of the fire growing, voracious, devouring, the burn of ropes binding bruised wrists, a single maddening thought, no escape. "Home," the lips breathed, reality melted, fire fell away, disappeared with the heat, the desperate screaming of the burning woman. "Hello, Eurydice," the bearded construct of Sigmund Freud said, watching the lips from behind his desk, the creases in his face forming into the edge of a smile. "Have you had enough of the stimulus yet?" "I feel much better, doctor," the lips responded. "I'm ready for the transition." "Oh, I highly doubt that," Freud grinned, tapped the edge of his pen against the hard surface of his desk. "You have only been in the construct for 13 seconds. Preparation often requires years of stimulus. Needle and shock treatment." He paused, pen held motionless in his hand. "Are you ready for needle treatment, or would you like to return to the stimulus?" "I want—" The lips hesitated. "I will return to the stimulus." "You know, you must someday face the needle and the shock," Freud said. "Stimulus may be the preferable mode of preparation for E807s like yourself, but it is not a wholly galvanizing measure, Eurydice." "I will return to the stimulus," the lips announced again, voice almost faltering. "Do you remember your mother?" Freud asked suddenly. "Loxoceles reclusa," the lips responded. "She was stained glass, rich with imperfections, legs as malleable as copper wire." The lips quirked into the slight crease of a light smile. "I remember the way she used to sing, the songs that followed isometric patterns, harmonized along with mathematical properties, her voice ringing out like tines on a strung wire." "She was not human?" "She was not." Freud raised an eyebrow, tapped out a quick series of thoughtful notes on his desk. "How old are you?" "What is the date?" the lips shot back. "December 21st, 4487. Old calendar." "Then I am 2,726 years, 89 days old," the lips quirked. "According to the old calendar, Freud." "And your mother was a spider?" The lips hesitated, parted, closed, unsure. "Your mother was human, Eurydice," Freud smiled. "You must accept that." If I do, will I be released? The lips almost blurted. Would that admission alone be enough to prove that you have the mental faculties to keep yourself contained within a body? Freud asked, arching an eyebrow again, this time almost playfully. There is only one way to find out, the lips responded. No, there are many ways. Freud's smile crawled up his cheek, turned wry. Many ways, Eurydice. I will return to the stimulus, the lips hurriedly announced, voice almost frightened, suddenly eager to escape. You will, Freud nodded, and you will start with situation 72. Another smile. Spend some time within the butcher. I want you to experience the sense of sadistic pride and glee he feels when he puts on the leather-knit flesh suit. The lips hesitated, unable or unwilling to speak. Earth is a harsh place, Eurydice. Freud played with the pen in the pause. You must be ready for anything. If I am to become human again, the lips began. Freud's nod came simple, final. You must remember what it is like to be human.